Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, Mike Lindell sent me a note yesterday. He has a special for the 6-piece towel set, $25 when you use promo code Joey. Just go to mypillow.com, use promo code Joey. You'll get the $25 offer on the 6-piece towel set, and I promise you, these will be the most comfortable, the most absorbent towels that you own. mypillow.com, use promo code Joey. Get the 6-piece towel set for just $25. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Here we go again. Category 5 Hurricane Milton poses extremely serious threat to Florida amid storm surge as mandatory evacuation orders are issued. As the Southeast still tries to clean up after Hurricane Helene, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre abruptly left the briefing after Fox News' Peter Doocy questioned Lebanon's funding during hurricane season. Meanwhile, hundreds of special operations personnel in North Carolina have formed their own homegrown rescue and supply operation in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene after they grew tired of waiting for the federal government to get its act together. Also, Representative John McCravy from Greenwood, South Carolina, says he has talked with many constituents and not a single person has been approved for the $750 FEMA payment that Vice President Kamala Harris so proudly announced this past weekend.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but you know they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
Mandatory evacuations are underway across the west coast of Florida as millions of residents prepare for life-threatening impacts from Hurricane Milton, which continues to rapidly intensify over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. It's strengthened into a powerful Category 5 storms with winds of up to 180 miles per hour. Now keep in mind, think about the devastation that we saw in parts of Florida, Georgia, particularly in the Carolinas, that was done by winds of about 70 miles per hour. 180 mile per hour winds. The National Hurricane Center said the central pressure in the eye of Hurricane Milton has fallen to a near record low. The NHC wrote urging residents to follow directions from local officials if told to leave, which they have been. They said Milton poses an extremely serious threat to Florida. Milton continues to be a monster storm, a record-breaking hurricane. According to the Fox Forecast Center, the hurricane has the second lowest pressure on record in the Gulf of Mexico and the lowest pressure in the Atlantic since 2005. At 180 miles per hour, Milton is the strongest Atlantic hurricane in 5 years since Hurricane Dorian in 2019. Milton is also tied for the fourth strongest storm since record-keeping began. Hurricane Allen, with 190 mile per hour winds, holds the record for the strongest Atlantic hurricane. The Southeast hasn't really even started full recovery efforts yet, still trying to rescue some people who haven't been able to be reached, still trying to get supplies to people, particularly in western North Carolina. But the Democrats are playing politics with the funding of storm cleanup while accusing the Republicans of misinformation and playing politics with FEMA's response. So who can we depend on? White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre got into a heated exchange with Fox News Channel's Peter Doocy over the White House sending aid to Lebanon during the hurricane season. Vice President Kamala Harris pledged Saturday to send $157 million of additional assistance to Lebanon while Israel attacks Hezbollah infrastructure and targets in the country. Harris argued that the country was facing an increasingly dire humanitarian situation. Obviously, Harris didn't go deeply enough into the Carolinas when she visited, she visited Charlotte, I think it was, over this past weekend, right? She needed to go a little further. She wants to talk about dire humanitarian situations. And we're sending $157 million to Lebanon? Doocy asked Jean-Pierre yesterday about the Biden-Harris administration asking Congress for approval to fund Small Businesses Administration disaster loans to help areas hit by Hurricane Helene, but not to send funds to a foreign country. Now, I normally do not play audio clips this long. But you have to listen to this entire exchange. It's just over 3 minutes. Listen to Peter Doocy asking what I think are just some common sense questions, and Jean-Pierre trying to toe the line to talk through talking points of the Biden-Harris administration.
On this issue of funding, the administration has money to send to Lebanon without Congress coming back. But Congress does have to come back to approve money to send to people in North Carolina. Do I have that right?
Here's what I'm going to be very clear about. The president and the vice president has had a robust whole of government response to this. Hundreds of millions of dollars. I said it at the top, more than $200 million that we have directly put towards survivors here for disaster help. And that's because of this president's commitment to make sure that we are there for communities that are impacted. We take this very seriously again. We take this very seriously. And before the hurricane hit, we pre-positioned more than 1,500 federal folks on the ground to help. And so we have made sure that every state has gotten their storm requested emergency declaration. They requested it, and we made sure they received it. We've taken this very seriously. More than $200 million that we have provided to the impacted areas. But instead, people want to do disinformation, misinformation, which is dangerous. Because then when folks on the ground hear that, they may not want to ask for the help that they need. That is there for them. That's our focus here.
But President Biden is fond of saying, show me your budget and I will tell you what you value. If he's got money for people in Lebanon right now, without Congress having to come back, what does it say about his values? There's not enough money right now for people in North Carolina who need it. That's not misinformation.
Wait, no, that is your whole premise of the question is misinformation, sir. What you do? Yes, it's misinformation.
Is there money to send to Lebanon right now?
I just mentioned to you that we provided more than $200 million to folks who are impacted in the area, and I just shared with you that people are deciding not to. People are deciding not to.
President Biden sent a letter to Congress that there's not enough money to help people in North Carolina.
We're talking about the SBA disaster loan.
That's money for people in North Carolina.
And that's important, and people in North Carolina need that. Wait, this is nothing new. Peter, this is nothing new. Congress comes together, they provide money, millions of dollars, for disaster relief. We're asking them to do the job that they have been doing for some time.
From a letter that President Biden sent to Johnson, McConnell, Schumer, and Jeffries. The president's letter is not misinformation. Would you agree?
No, the way you're asking me the question is misinformation. There is money that we are allocating to the impacted areas, and there's money there to help people who truly need it. There are survivors who need the funding, and it's there.
That you don't like misinformation.
I actually said we have the money available to help survivors of Hurricane Helene and also Hurricane Milton. Now there's going to be a shortfall, right? Because we don't know how bad Hurricane Milton is going to be. And so we're going to need additional funding. That's
exactly what I just asked about. And you said it was misinformation. Yes.
What you're asking me is why Congress needs to come back and do their job. That's what you're asking me. Congress needs to come back and do their job and provide extra assistance, extra funding to disaster relief fund. That's what Congress needs to do, and we're going to continue to urge that. You may not want that, but that's okay. That's what this president wants, and that's what the vice president wants. Thanks, everybody.
You may not want that. That's her typical comeback, trying to put the person asking the question. And I thought Peter Doocy exercised extreme patience there, because you could watch him, and I was watching the video portion of this, and you could tell he was ready to ask the next question as she's going through all of her talking points about the efforts of the Biden administration needing more money from Congress, and that Congress needed to do their jobs. Congress needed to come back. But it's a very good question, isn't it? So if Congress doesn't have enough money, and we've heard that from Joe Biden, we've heard it from Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, we've heard it from many, many Biden-Harris leaders, if they don't have the money to do what they need to do, where do they get the money to send to Lebanon? And why are we so concerned about a humanitarian crisis in Lebanon when we have our own humanitarian crisis right here in the United States? This is a prime example of why people do not trust the federal government and why people don't want to work hard and send their money to Washington, because they blow it. They throw it away. They do not know how to prioritize. Our people should be first. Americans should be first. That's why Donald Trump's Make America Great Again, that's why America First, that agenda is so successful, because people are tired of this mumbo jumbo that we get from Congress and from the White House. And she's trying to blame Congress. Well, they need to come back and do their job. No. Joe Biden needs to do his job. Kamala Harris needs to do her job. That's what needs to happen. Stop spending money in Lebanon and Ukraine and all these foreign countries when we have needs right here with true Americans. You agree? Text me. Email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. PhD Weight Loss wants you to know, yes, you can. You can get back to your ideal healthy weight. Yes, you can get back into sizes you thought you'd never see again. And yes, you can get rid of that harmful belly fat, all without becoming dependent on medication loaded with side effects. Hi, it's Joey Hudson here. PhD Weight Loss encourages and equips you to lose weight the healthy, natural way and keep it all for the rest of your life. Dr. Ashley Lucas, a licensed registered nutritionist, developed a solid plan that works. Trust me, I lost 30 pounds. You see, PhD Weight Loss removes the guesswork. They literally tell you exactly what to eat each day while you watch the pounds melt away. But they also teach you to think about food differently and to learn to anticipate and navigate situations that make you want to indulge. PhD coaches will teach you to believe finally that yes, you can do it. With no gimmicks or lifelong medications, finally lose the weight and keep it off. Yes, you can. Call today. PhD Weight Loss, 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Okay, I've calmed down a bit. I got really fired up there in that last segment, and I think I'm justified. Are you a little frustrated, too, at the response? And I realize we've been talking a lot about Hurricane Helene. And for those of you maybe who listen to my podcast and you're in another part of the country, maybe you're listening on the Odyssey app right now as well, and somewhere else in the world you're thinking, well, there are other issues to talk about other than the hurricane. Well, I get that. But it has devastated our area here in the Carolinas. And we got another one bearing down on Florida that could be a lot worse. And it's just so frustrating because you hear the Biden-Harris administration talking about all this stuff that they're doing. I mean, in that last segment where Karine Jean-Pierre talked about $200 million being sent to the Carolinas, and she thought that was a big deal, that they had sent $200 million. That's a drop in the bucket to what we have sent overseas, to Ukraine, to some of these other countries. So that's why Americans are upset. And hey, look, if they want to keep talking like this, let them do it. Maybe we should just sit back and not call them out on it, because I think the American people are sick of this, and that's why they're going to turn out in huge numbers on November the 5th to elect Donald Trump. There's story after story after story of people just not doing their jobs or not making good decisions. Maybe I should put it that way. I think some of the local emergency response, some of the decisions that we've heard about, like not letting helicopters fly in, I think that's probably, they're doing it with good intentions. But hey, make those decisions using a little bit of common sense. Put the people first. And just a little later in the show, I'm going to talk with Representative John McCravy from Greenwood, South Carolina. And, one of his points is that a lot of people who needed electrical service restored because maybe the meter was ripped away from their house, they had to get a permit in order for the meter to be reattached in order to get electricity. Well, the county's inspectors are going crazy out there. They have so much going on. So maybe there needs to be a provision, and he talks about it, maybe an exemption from those types of things to get people's electricity back on. Then there can be an inspection in the future. The story out of Swannanoa, North Carolina. Swannanoa was hit hard. Hundreds of special operations personnel have formed their own homegrown rescue and supply operation because the federal government's not getting there fast enough. They're tired of waiting for the feds. The New York Post writes the story, and they talk about finding an all-volunteer operation that's being run out of a Harley-Davidson dealership, and they describe it as being run ruthlessly, efficiently, with military precision. Ex-Green Beret Adam Smith responded when asked about the agency's presence, talking about FEMA, because the New York Post is saying, who is FEMA? He said that as the deadly storm ravaged this area of western North Carolina, he hasn't seen FEMA's responses there. He said, in fact, he says FEMA has been incompetently responding, and they don't have the capability to do what he and his group of former military people are doing up there, saying that the agency didn't even show up until Thursday of this past week, almost a week after this happened. Unwilling to stand idly by and feeling his community was languishing with inadequate support from government, Smith enlisted the help of a few good men, created his own little army of people there, men and women who take matters into their own hands. This Harley-Davidson dealership has become a forward operating base, complete with a fleet of 35 helicopters that have flown hundreds of rescue, reconnaissance, and resupply sorties. Listen to the description of what they're doing.
When this area got hit and I saw what was happening, I diverted down here to run air operations for what Savage Freedoms is doing. We're staging out of a business that just got massacred, but they're giving us the property to work at an emergency operations center out of here. This mission out here has slowly turned into the recovery aspect of it. So today alone, we've had numerous supply runs with requests from medical supplies to O2 to personnel rescue to recons into areas we haven't been yet. Resupplies are going into the regions that cannot be accessible by ground, and some of that is even by horseback or UTVs. The bridges are blown, so our recon teams are telling us where we can and cannot send vehicles, and we're dropping birds right on top of them with resupplies, or we're reaching out even further. We are communicating via Starlink. Let's be very clear, this region of the world is talking because of Starlink and SpaceX. So that's what's happening here outside of Asheville, North Carolina.
That was ex-Green Beret Adam Smith describing what he and people that he's recruited has done, courtesy of the New York Post. Organizers are calling the effort the Savage Freedoms Relief Operation. Smith says that they have proudly adopted the alternate moniker, the Redneck Air Force. But boy, are they getting stuff done. The dealership has, with current and former soldiers decked out in camo pants and army boots, a handgun strapped to their chests and hips, crop duster pilots, helicopter tour guides, and special operations pilots, most of them off-duty or retired military, have answered the call from Smith and others in North Carolina's extensive military community. They say that they own their own aircraft. They fly doctors, medicine, generators, fuel, and food to isolated residents cut off from the world by this unprecedented flooding that they saw and witnessed in western North Carolina. Supplies and fuel for an operation of this magnitude don't come cheap, but the group has relied entirely on donations, including around $190,000 raised through a GoFundMe page, according to Smith. He shared some images of a row of helicopters. Now, we saw a row of helicopters in Greenville, South Carolina. I told you about that yesterday. But that row of helicopters was FEMA's helicopters, who was blocking a runway, reportedly, so that this type of operation couldn't take place out of Greenville. In this garage, he takes you for a tour in the garage under a window covered in topographic maps of western North Carolina. It's like a war operations center, where they have all these dots and lines drawn as the pilots come back in. They make notes of bridges that are out, roads that are impassable, so that they know where they need to fly or where they can send vehicles. Smith, who's from Austin, drove 18 hours through the night to get back to his family, only to find that there was no road access to his home or there. So he did what any concerned father would do, he said, who happens to know a lot of people with helicopters, arranged his family to be airlifted out by a private pilot. And stories like that go on. This is what we need happening. This is what the federal government should be doing, but they're not. Thank goodness for people like this former military hero. Up next, South Carolina Representative John McCravy says he hasn't had a single person say they were approved for Kamala Harris's $750 FEMA payment. Does that surprise you? Hope you'll join the conversation today. 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Send your comments to the Firmin Ford text line. You can leave a quick voice message, and your emails are always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Firmin Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Firmin Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you could trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Firmin Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Firmin, Matthew Firmin. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Firmin Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Firmin Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Firmin Ford online at firminford.com, firminford.com. On our guest line from Greenwood, Representative John McCravy. How are you, sir? And how are things in Greenwood after that horrendous storm just over a week ago?
Well, things have been better, but we can see light at the end of the tunnel now. We've got a lot of our electricity has been turned on now. My own mother-in-law got hers turned on last night.
Wow.
So I was able to go get my generator and pack that up. Now there's lines still laying all over the street, on our street, but somehow they got the power up.
Yeah. When you look at it, and I know it's frustrating for people like your mother-in-law who's had to experience an extended amount of time without electricity and other services, internet. Look, I'm not so sure that the internet did not bother my mother, Nana Hudson, more than the electricity, because she was cut off from Facebook.
Well, I can think. A lot of people said they'd rather have the internet than they would electricity.
Exactly. But in the overall scheme of things, the electric co-ops and Duke Energy and all those providing electrical service have done a pretty yeoman's job getting service restored. When you went into some of the areas that I traveled around on Friday afternoon after the storm over in Pickens County area, Oconee County, then back around Anderson County. I mean, there were some areas, it was like a war zone. And the way you've described some of the things in Greenwood, same down there. And that's a lot to do. And yes, we all want it quickly. We want it overnight. But, kudos to those linemen who have worked some 24-hour shifts to get us service back.
Joey, literally, we've had, I would imagine, 500 linemen in town. I've seen that many trucks just at our high school, over at different churches, parked everywhere.
Yeah.
And our community came together. They've given them all the food they need. They fed them for free at a lot of the restaurants. They've brought in food for them and snacks. And I know my wife was involved in washing their clothes.
Yeah.
They all put their clothes in a bag and got their clothes washed.
Wow.
So proud of Dana for doing that. And she's still doing it, I think. So,
yeah. Well,
but it's a big task.
Yeah, it is. And you hate for these types of things to happen at the same time. How encouraging is it that you see people come together, neighbors helping neighbors, churches jumping in and doing things that, it's a reminder government can't do everything, can it?
It cannot, and it takes a disaster for people to remember their neighbors and care about them like they used to. And I tell you, it brings you together. Even though it's a tragedy, you don't want it to happen. It's really had some good spin-off effects on everybody. And Lord, we hope this doesn't happen again. But if it does, I think we'll be more ready for it next time.
Yeah, well, I would hope so. Of course, Hurricane Milton headed towards the Tampa Bay area today. They may start seeing some remnants of that. Just pray that it weakens or that it veers off and heads back into the Gulf, or Tampa Bay could be hit with what is being described as potentially the worst hurricane that they've ever experienced there, for sure. We pray that does not happen. Let's talk for a minute, and Representative John McCravy with me today, talking about the government and the government's role as a result of all the electrical outages and all. I've heard a lot of elected officials in some of the updates, and this is scattered throughout the state, Greenville County, Spartanburg County, Anderson, all around, down in your area. Mayors and people talking about that maybe they need to reevaluate the idea of underground utility service. Is there a role that the state could play in helping utility companies and encouraging utility companies to put as much of this underground as possible?
I think so, Joey, and I think we're going to learn some other lessons too, and I agree with that. These gas stations, to me, if you've got 8 or 10 pumps or more, you ought to have a generator ready to go, because we got the gas in the ground. There's plenty of gas. You just can't get it out when the electricity goes out.
Yeah.
And that's the number one thing that caused chaos with gas lines.
Yeah.
So they've learned in Florida to require their gas stations to have a generator. And I think it's time for us to do that too. We just got to learn from this. But there's a lot of lessons. There was an assisted living in my area that didn't have a generator. And I mean, they were calling up people saying, come get your loved one who's got a stroke on one side, and
yeah.
It was a difficult time. I mean, they were about to ship them all off to Columbia to sleep on a cot in a gym.
Yeah.
So we've got some things to work on, but generally, I got to say, our local government did a fantastic job. Our linemen, our energy companies have done a wonderful job. They've been out there working constantly. Our CPW in Greenwood, in the city, Duke Power in the county, they've done a wonderful job. And the National Guard, they came in and helped, from about day 3, they were here, and they embedded a lieutenant colonel in the Greenwood emergency operations. And I think they've done that in almost every county, and that's helped coordinate things and coordinate the needs out there. So we've had a good result, I think, from our state officials and our state people and our energy companies working together with the community to get things done. We've got a lot to do. We got a lot of cleanup. We've still got trees on houses, that people are waiting to get off. But overall, you got to say, I got to give those entities kudos for what they've done.
Sure. John McCravy with me today, representing the 13th District in Greenwood County. On Sunday, the FEMA administrator, Deanne Criswell, discussed recovery from Hurricane Helene across the Southeast, and she kind of pushed back on what she called baseless claims about the agency's funding, calling them ridiculous. Ms. Criswell says that many are putting politics ahead of people. You've been out there, you've been talking with people, taking phone calls from constituents needing help. What have you personally been hearing?
Joey, it doesn't pleasure me to say this, but the only calls I've had about FEMA is I made an application online and I was denied 10 minutes later. And everybody I've talked to was denied. I haven't had a single person tell me they got anything. And we've had thousands and thousands of people. I was looking on a post tonight that have applied. So I don't know what's going on. I was told today by somebody at the emergency operations center that their whole website was not working properly and that everybody was being denied automatically.
Wow.
And that they were going to send people down here to help people get their benefits. So now they're having to send FEMA people here just to help them get the benefits online that they're not getting. So I haven't talked to a single person. People out in the country have called me and said, Mr. McCravy, I lost everything in my freezer, everything in my refrigerator, and I don't have the money to go buy it. And I applied for FEMA, and they told me I was denied.
Yeah.
So this
wow.
is the kind of thing going on, and all it's done is aggravate things. They give them hope that they're going to get $700. That's what their website or whatever says, and then they apply and they spend an hour online or whatever, however much time it takes to apply and give them all this information. 10 minutes later, they get a message, you're denied. So we got to do better than that. And but we've come to expect that we can't rely on the federal government. We've got to rely on ourselves, and it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. So the $750 that Vice President Kamala Harris was so proud talking about as she made her visit to the Carolinas over the weekend, FEMA supposedly giving this to people for immediate assistance. What you're hearing is that that's not working. That's not getting through to people.
Not one single person has told me they got that benefit. Not one. And I've had numerous calls saying they got denied and they don't understand why.
Yeah. Wow. Representative John McCravy with me today. So let's talk for a minute then about, let's look forward, things that we have learned and some of the things that as the legislature goes back into session next year, I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion on the response and what can be done differently. What are some things you think you'll be talking about?
Well, one thing is getting people's electricity to their homes hooked back up. There's a barrier when you have permits, you have local permits, you have local inspections that you have to get anytime you mess with a meter on somebody's house, and the electric company does not do that. So you have to get your own private electrician to come out there, put it back on your house, and then Duke Power will hook it back up.
Yeah.
So that's just the way it is. Unfortunately, I'd certainly love to see it where Duke Power could just hook it back up themselves, but if that's not a reality and that's not going to happen, we need to see about waiving permits, fees, and inspections during a time of crisis. So we don't need anything, and I'm working on that right now. I mean, I'm suggesting that right now in my own area because we don't need any delay. And
yeah.
I've heard from one of the county councilmen today that they were going to think about just waiving the inspection for now on this because nobody should have to sit there and wait for their electricity to come on for an inspector to come out to their house.
Yep.
So especially in a crisis.
Yep.
So that's a local issue. Then we have, what I mentioned about generators. I mean, I thought DHEC, and maybe they do, maybe there is a regulation that any assisted living as well as a nursing home has to have a generator. If that's the case, somebody's generator failed or they didn't have one. But I think we need to make sure that that's the case. And also with the gas stations, I mean, in Florida, they make them have a generator if they're going to operate a big gas station. Maybe not a little mom and pop with one or two, pumps,
Mm-hmm.
but if you got 8 or 10 pumps like one of these big gas stations, I mean, it shouldn't be a big deal to have a generator in the back that can pump that gas out. I'm sure there's a lot more. It'd be nice if we had a better way to get trees off houses than just relying on the private generosity of the Baptist Convention and these other organizations, that veterans organizations that have to get out there and do that, because none of our government people will get on somebody's house and help get a tree off. They just won't do it. National Guard won't do it. DOT won't do it. Nobody will do it.
Well, I think the lesson learned here is, and hopefully we won't have another storm like this in our lifetime, but I think we can learn from this, and hopefully we'll put some things in place that will prevent these types of things in the future. Representative John McCravy, it's always a pleasure. Appreciate what you do. Hopefully next time we'll be talking about something different than a storm.
That's right, Joe. Appreciate you, and thank you for getting the word out and keeping us all informed.
Always a pleasure. Whether you're replacing a broken appliance or maybe you're just upgrading, you're totally remodeling the kitchen, when it's time to get those new appliances, when you're ready for them, you don't want to have to wait weeks or even months to get started using them, right? Well, that's not the case when you shop with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse. With over 11,000 square feet and 1,500 appliances at any given time, you can buy today and use today quite often. I'm talking about shopping with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse in Pickens. It's worth the short drive over to Pickens. Jeff, Johnny, Kyle, the whole team over there, they'll take good care of you. They have an award-winning service department, expert installation, extended warranties, and at Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they treat you like family. You're more than just a credit card swipe to all the team over there. Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they're proud to offer Speed Queen, the only washer and dryers with manufacturer's warranties that cover parts and labor. You owe it to yourself, if you're looking for a new appliance, to head over to Pickens to Discounted Appliance Warehouse online at dawpickens.com, dawpickens.com. Continuing today's show on the text line. Texter says Hurricane Milton's expected to hit Tampa Bay. I'll bet Mike's will be staying with you in Peg. Well, close. Mike actually flew north yesterday, headed to New York to get out of the path of Hurricane Milton. Texter, hey, Joey, so good to hear your voice. After 2 weeks, we have our power, internet, and landlines back. God bless those workers and those still hurting from this storm. Catching up on missed podcasts. I confess I, too, have to re-listen at times due to your soothing voice. But we hear them, and thank you for all you do. Well, thank you. And yes, if you do listen to my podcast, if you missed portions of today's show, you can listen on Just the Truth. Just search for Just the Truth, Joey Hudson on the Odyssey app or wherever you listen to podcasts. And maybe if you have been without power, you haven't been able to recharge your phone, or maybe just conserving that, and you've missed out on some previous shows, just go back and listen. That's the great thing about podcasts. You can listen anytime that you'd like to. Tony says, Joey, I get tired of these people saying FEMA has money to help the victims of the hurricane, but Mayorkas himself says we're broke and can't help American citizens. There is a conflict in what they're saying, isn't there? One is saying that we don't have enough money. Joe Biden saying the same thing, yet we have enough money to send millions and millions to other countries around the world. That's really hard to wrap your mind around, isn't it? I don't care who you are. Some people, and let's see, who was it over the weekend? Oh, the FEMA director that we talked with a minute ago with Representative McCravy. The FEMA director over the weekend kind of said, well, you're kind of stupid if you don't understand the process here. She claimed that, yeah, we have plenty of money, and that it's misinformation for those who are saying that we don't. Well, look, we're just talking about what your administration has said. We're talking about what your boss, Joe Biden, has said. Now, I know that Karine Jean-Pierre claims, well, that's a different fund. He was asking about the Small Business Administration. But it doesn't matter if the federal government has enough money to send whatever it is, $127 million or whatever, to Lebanon, then that's just $127 million out of the federal coffers that could have been redirected to the Small Business Administration if that's where we need it. So I don't care what you say, that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. They want us to believe that just because it's been allocated to another program, you can't move it. Yes, you can. And by the way, there breaking news yesterday, and we don't have time to get into all the details, but they found about $1 billion that had been set aside for previous natural disasters and emergency, and they're claiming, well, it hasn't been claimed for some of these previous programs, so we can't reallocate it. Maybe it's time to take a look at it. If it's something that happened years ago, maybe it'll never be requested. Texter says, and this is Faye. Faye's back. Faye, I know Faye has texted me and said she has not had electricity and internet like so many as well. She says, well, Hillary Clinton has a lot of gall talking about misinformation. And to her, misinformation comes only from Republicans. How much longer America will take it for the Holy Bible to be misinformation? Hillary and Karma want your guns and your tongue out of commission. Wake up, red-blooded Americans, Faye writes. Just heard about half of so-called Christians won't be voting. Explain to your grands why you're leaving them to socialism, that you hated Trump more than you loved America. And that is a hard one to wrap your brain around, too, is how people can say, well, I can't vote for Donald Trump because he is deficient morally. I've heard a lot of Christian leaders say that, or some, I shouldn't say a lot. I've heard Christian leaders say that they could not support someone like Donald Trump because of whatever reason. But yet they'll support a lady who has told us she believes that a woman should have the right to kill a baby. So you're concerned about Donald Trump being divorced multiple times, but yet Kamala Harris is telling you that she believes it's okay to kill babies. Someone help me understand that one. Texter, Joey, what's up with the Spectrum internet services? Customers are without internet almost a week after getting power restored. No updates and no explanation of what's going on. I've heard that from some others about Spectrum, and all I can say is keep keep contacting them. And let me remind you, we have the radio station, 98.9 WORD.com, has a pages of resources with phone numbers. So if you're still having trouble finding how to contact someone or who to contact, and it may be time to call the Public Service Commission in South Carolina. They regulate utilities. 98.9 WORD.com. You'll find a number on there, email addresses, and other various information that may be helpful. Texter says, I live in Woodfin, in-laws in Madison County. I have not seen any help from FEMA in those areas as well as Swannanoa. They only help the blue city of Asheville if they do any help. We take care of ourselves, not the government. And, that we're seeing that a lot of people just saying, okay, we're not going to sit around and wait on the federal government, which is a good thing. I agree with you. I wouldn't either. We're going to do it ourselves. By the way, I haven't spent much time on this whole story of P. Diddy, Sean Diddy Combs, or whatever his name is. I don't keep up that much with the whole rapper world. But evidently, there's going to be some big news that some big name celebrities, we're told, and this is from the New York Post, that some big name celebrities are quietly paying off victims to avoid being publicly named in lawsuits related to this Diddy sex assault case. This according to a lawyer who supposedly, attorney Tony Busby, he says he's representing more than 120 of Diddy Combs' alleged victims. He talked with TMZ about this, and that stars are about to be sued by his firm, and he's giving them a chance to settle up before the claims hit public. Now, isn't that sort of blackmail? If you're saying, okay, we'll settle this out of court, we'll settle this quietly. If you don't, we're going to go public with it. He says that some celebrities have opted to settle, to write the check. But should that be an option? If a rich and famous person was involved with this, what Diddy Combs is sitting in jail for right now, should they be allowed to buy their way out of this? Should they be allowed to buy silence? Because I guarantee you, Diddy would have written a big old check to avoid having those ankle bracelets on right now. He would love the opportunity to write a check. He's not going to get that opportunity. He's going to end up in a federal prison somewhere. Of course, he was arrested, just over a week ago on criminal sex trafficking charges. He's pleaded not guilty. Mr. Busby said that he will separately be lodging a slew of lawsuits, the way he described it, including on behalf of 25 minors beginning this month. He sent out demand letters notifying others that he'll be suing them in addition to Diddy Combs. Busby said he will be aggressively going after anyone who saw the alleged abuse occurring and failed to act to protect victims. Now, again, is this not a criminal act? If you were one of the people at one of these parties and you saw this happening, you saw some of these underage kids being abused, and you sat back and you let it happen, shouldn't you be charged as well criminally? And maybe they will be. Maybe as this unwinds, maybe more will. We'll see. It just shows you how dark and how sordid that Hollywood lifestyle can be. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined our mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Just click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, find me on YouTube. Be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on my YouTube channel. Just search for Joey Hudson. Appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with me. Be sure and forward this edition of Just the Truth to some friends. Just click on the share button. Send it to a few of your contacts, because if we're going to build our community and if we're going to win in November, we got to build an army of conservatives. The way we beat Joe Biden is through educating people, and no better way than encouraging them to listen to Just the Truth. Hey, keep those comments coming via the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 477-5639. Your emails always welcome as well. Joey@joeyhudson.com. Don't forget to take advantage of the MyPillow special, $25 for the My Towels 6-piece towel set when you use promo code Joey. Just go to MyPillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. We're back again tomorrow. Hope you will be too. Remember, God's got this. He's still in control.